Hello, my name is Daniel Helms, and this is my project, Belief Entanglement, Christian Leaders and Institutions' Participation in Political Affairs. So to start, what is belief entanglement and how does it happen? So belief entanglement is when two or more belief systems combine to create certainty and reduce dissonance. And how it happens is belief entanglement between Christian values and right-wing politics happen through the church, politicians, and systems. So the church is when church leaders inject their political beliefs into their religious messages. The right-wing politicians can gain power through using theological rhetoric in order to gain and keep a religious voter base. And systems perpetuate entanglement where the market decides what values are important rather than the church, and people consume religious content rather than devote themselves to religious ideals. And these three things contribute to entanglement between right-wing values and Christian values. So how much should the church engage in politics? So there's three views that help us understand how much churches should participate based on entanglement theory. The first is pro-engagement. Pro-engagement is where political entanglement can be mitigated and the church leaders need to engage in politics to represent their communities and fight against injustice. In this view, church leaders are arbiters and representatives of their communities. The anti-political engagement is where political engagement or political entanglement risk is too high and church leaders will end up being used as set pieces to sway voters rather than represent their communities. Paula White-Cain is just one example where she is a church leader being used as a political set piece rather than a Christian leader. And then the third argument is no effect, where whether church leaders engage in politics or not, congregations would just simply flock to whatever Christian leaders agree with their religious and socio-political ideas. In other words, they'll just church hop to whoever agrees with them. So for my research questions, the first one is, what is the prevalence of political and religious belief entanglement within local church communities? So I wanted to figure out how common entanglement was. The second research question is, what specific right-wing and Christian beliefs are most and least entangled? So I have 5 that I'm testing. I want to figure out which of the 5 are most and least entangled. And the last research question is, how does the frequency of political media consumption correlate with intensity of belief entanglement? So I predict that the more political media one consumes, the more entangled their beliefs will be with right-wing political beliefs. For the methods, I have 42 individuals from local Christian groups. I'm surveying Christians because I'm looking at specifically Christians entangling their beliefs. The survey is an 11-question Likert scale, where 5 questions are about Christian ideals, 5 questions are right-wing political ideals that are antithetical to Christian ideals, and the 11th question is just asking how often an individual consumes political media. And I have 5 categories for each of the 5 questions. The first is leadership, wealth redistribution, healthcare, retaliation, and immigration. So my results, the two t-tests that I conducted. The first one is to test agreement with Christian values against agreement with right-wing political values that are antithetical to Christian values. And the second t-test is to test right-wing political agreement against how much political media was consumed. So in the first t-test, I got a p-value well below 0.05, which tells me that there is a lot of entanglement between Christian beliefs and right-wing political values among the 42 participants that I surveyed. And the second t-test p-value was slightly above 0.05, which means I can't technically say that lowering political media consumption will lower entanglement, but it kind of will. It's just not the only thing that will help. For the most entangled ideals, retaliation was one of the most entangled ideals, where both the mean for the Republican ideal and the Christian ideal were very similar. So whereas Republican belief says that America should retaliate against its enemies, and Christian ideal says turn the other cheek, the Christian survey didn't understand that, so they entangled those beliefs. The next one was leadership, where the Republican ideal was for extreme right-wing that there should be pretty much only Christian leadership in the U.S., and the Christian ideal is that Jesus just in the Bible rejected political leadership. So Christians definitely thought that there should be Christian-only leadership. So they definitely entangled the leadership belief. The one unentangled belief was wealth redistribution, where generally Christians agreed that giving to the poor was important, and they also agreed that the wealthy paying for social programs to aid the poor is good. So they did not entangle the wealth redistribution belief with right-wing political beliefs. So the limitations, the first limitation is that I surveyed mostly young participants, college age, so I can't say how much entanglement there is among older Christians when it comes to entangling their beliefs with right-wing beliefs. Also, they were mostly evangelical participants. So for Catholic and mainline Protestants, who generally have a more structured belief system that is less susceptible to entanglement, I can't say how much entanglement those two sects of Christianity are. And then the third limitation is that this only tests for political media consumption. So I'm not looking at any other methods for why entanglement happens. I only specifically looked at testing whether or not political media consumption contributed to entanglement. That being said, for future projects, I could definitely test different types of right-wing values against Christian values. I didn't end up going into race or gender. I certainly could do that next time. I could additionally try and test left-wing values that are antithetical to Christian beliefs to see if there are any liberal Christians who are entangling their Democrat values with Christianity. And lastly, I could also just use a qualitative approach. So that way, instead of just testing for political media consumption, I could simply ask the Christians why they vote a certain way or why they're entangling things. So in conclusion, belief entanglement between right-wing politics and Christianity is widespread. Christians specifically entangle values regarding leadership and retaliation, but not charity. And lowering political media consumption is helpful, but not the only mitigation method. My research is important because mitigating political or belief entanglement can alter political beliefs and voting habits among Christians across the United States. It can also reconnect American Christians with their faith by unentangling them from the political system. And lastly, if entanglement between Christian ideals and right-wing politics cannot be mitigated, it will cause Christians to trade a church for a nation, a theology for a political system, and God for a politician. Thank you.